Okay, we're going to take a look at factoring quadratics, quadratic trinomials specifically. And we're going to start with what are probably the easier ones because they do have a shortcut. But I'm going to go through the whole process first so we understand where it's coming from, and then we can start using the shortcut. It will help to learn the process though, because a shortcut is only going to work, like it says here, when a equals 1. So if the a value is not 1, then the shortcut's not going to work. So we will need to learn the whole process. Okay, so let's start with understanding what we're even talking about when I say a equals 1. So down here, this is what a quadratic trinomial looks like in standard form. Ax to the second plus bx plus c. So a is the coefficient of the x squared term, b is the coefficient of the x term, and c is the constant. So when I say a equals 1, I mean that this coefficient here in front of the x squared is always going to be 1 for these problems that we're going to look at first. So let's look at this problem. Let's start with x to the second plus x minus 12. All right, so the process is called the AC method, and that is because we're going to multiply the a value times the c value. Only our a value is always going to be 1. So a, 1, times c, negative 12. So a times c is going to equal negative 12. 1 times negative 12 is negative 12. Then I need to find factors that add up to the b value. So in this case, the b value, there's a hidden 1 there. So we need to find factors that add up to equal 1. So I can start listing factors of 12. 1 and 12, 2 and 6, 3 and 4. And we need which one of these factors will add up to equal that middle term of 1. Well, nothing's going to work here, but we got to pay attention to this negative sign. So we need it to multiply to negative 12. Well, 1 times 12 is not negative 12. One of the numbers has to be negative. Since we want our answer to add up to a positive, it makes sense for the smaller numbers to be the negatives. And if you're not sure, you could try the smaller numbers. If you can't find an answer, then change it and make the bigger numbers negative, or vice versa. So if I try this, negative 1 plus 12, that'd be 11, so that doesn't work. Negative 2 plus 6, well, that's 4. That doesn't work. Negative 3 plus 4, yes, that is 1. So my numbers are negative 3 and positive 4. And what we're going to do is we're going to rewrite this by changing just that middle term. So this is going to stay 1x to the second. This is going to stay minus 12. I'm just rewriting that middle term. Instead of 1x, I'm going to use those numbers I found. I found negative 3 and positive 4. So it'll be negative 3x and positive 4x. And then we double check. If I combine these terms, negative 3x plus 4x, it should give me 1x. And it does. As long as it does, then we found our numbers correctly. Okay, so now we actually just learned how to do this. Factor by grouping. If I have 4 terms, I can factor by grouping. So I can group these first 2 together, and I can group these last 2 together. And now we're just following those steps that we hopefully are already getting better at. So now we do the GCF of these first 2, and that's just going to be a 1 and an x. And then we divide by that GCF. 1 divided by 1 is 1. Subtract the exponents. 2 minus 1 is 1. And negative 3 divided by 1 is negative 3. Subtract the exponents. 1 minus 1, those x's go away. Then I repeat that process again for the second set of parentheses. Greatest common factor of 4 and 12 would be 4. Remember that whatever this sign is, we drop down. So it's going to be plus this time. Now we're going to divide out that GCF. 4 divided by 4 is 1. And we still have that x there. Negative 12 divided by 4 is negative 3. And then again, same with factoring by grouping, because that's all we're doing now, is factoring by grouping. These should match. So that's one part of my answer. X minus 3. And the other answer comes from the GCS we divided out. So that 1x, or just x, and the plus 4. And there's our answers. So now let's look at where is this shortcut? How could I do this a lot faster? And again, this shortcut only works because this a number is 1. If that A number was anything else, you would have to do this process, which is just factoring by grouping. If it is 1 though, let's check those numbers again. So when I factored down here, we got -3 and +4. So if I think, where am I seeing those numbers again? Right here, -3 and +4. So you just put your variable with your first number, so x with my -3, and then x with my +4. So let's try one just using the shortcut. Let's look at this problem, x squared minus 10x plus 16. So we still have to do that AC part. We still have to find our numbers. So I need to do A times C. So the A is 1, C is 16, so 1 times 16 is 16. So my goal number is 16. I need factors of 16. So 1 and 16, 2 and 8, 4 and 4. And then I need factors that add up to equal -10. And again, that number comes from the middle term here. -10 is the B term. So we have to add up to equal the B term, which is -10. Okay? But if I'm adding these up, none of them are going to be equal -10 because they're all positives. And I do need to get a positive 16. So the only other way I'm going to get a positive 16 is if they're both negatives. For example, -1 times -16 is still a positive 16. And -2 times -8, positive 16. And -4 still positive 16. Okay, so now we check. -1 plus -16, that's -17, so that one didn't work. -2 plus -8, yes, that one works. And we can just check down here. -4 plus -4 would be -8, so that's not -10. So the numbers we found were -2 and -8. So we're going to set up our parentheses. And then I'm going to take my variable, which is x, with my first number was a -2, so -2 for -2. Then my next one, set up my x, and then we had a -8, so I write -8 for -8. So I'm taking these two numbers we found and just putting them right into my answers. So we're basically skipping all these steps here in the middle of that factor by grouping, and we can go right to our answer. But again, it only works when the A value is 1. So again, you take your variable, always goes first, and then these are going to be the two numbers that you found. We found -2 and -8. So we can see how those go right into the factors.